Hey, good evening. The Design Review Board public meeting of May 27th, 2021 is called to order. Due to the COVID-19 novel coronavirus and the health recommendations from the LA County Health Department, the Design Review Board meeting is being conducted virtually with no members of the public present. The public is encouraged to watch and participate from the safety of their homes. The meeting can be viewed on local cable TV and is being streamlined online at the city's website at www.glendaleca.gov. For public comments and questions during the meeting, please call 818-937-8100. Again, that number is 818-937-8100. City staff will be submitting the questions and comments in real time to the appropriate person. Current Design Review Board agendas are available by visiting our city's website at www.glendaleca.gov. Records of the decisions for all projects will be posted online on the Planning Division's website. Please note that any appeal of a case heard today must be filed within 15 calendar days of the design review decision date. The appeal application is also available online. Roll call, Board Member Caro. Board Member Caro Minas.
Here, I'm sorry.
Thank you. Board Member Smith.
Present.
Board Member Simonian.
Present.
Board Member Chagayan is absent, and Chair Welch.
Here.
Report regarding posting of the agenda. The agenda for the May 27th, 2021 regular meeting of the Glendale Design Review Board was posted on the city's bulletin board outside City Hall on May 24th, 2021, and on the city's website on May 20th, 2021. Next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes from May 13th. Are there any comments or is there a motion to approve?
I make a motion to approve, and in the future to do a little more proofreading before we get it.
Thank you. We will then. And this would be in the records of decision or in the actual minutes themselves?
In the record of decision, if you please.
We will make note of that and also do an amendment to that record of decision. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
I'm sorry, was that a second by Board Member Minas?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. In terms of a roll call, Board Member Smith?
Aye.
Board Member Minas?
Yes.
Board Member Simonian?
Yes.
Chair Welch?
Yes.
The minutes are approved 4-0. The next item on the agenda would be board and commission member comments and community development department updates. We have no updates from the department. Do any of the board members wish to make comments? I see none. Next item would be oral communications, and those would be items limited to not a part of this agenda. I have no oral communication callers. So with that, we will go to the review calendar. There are no items under old business this evening, and we have one case under new business, and that would be a design review board project located at 900 East Broadway, case number PDR 210-7450. I would be more than happy to either go into the description or turn the meeting over to the case planner, Mr. Roger Kiesel, for the staff presentation and project description.
Yeah, I think we can go ahead and straight to Mr. Kiesel.
Great. Give me a second to share my screen and I'll proceed. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
Great, thanks. All right, good evening, Mr. Chair, members of the Design Review Board. The item this evening is case number PDR 2107450, located at 900 East Broadway. The proposal involves the demolition of the on-site building and surface parking lots and the construction of a new 5-story residential building. In total, there are 127 residential units located on the site, all of which will be affordable units, aside from the one manager's apartment. There are 92 parking spaces provided on the site. The project is located on a 34,500 square foot site in the C3 and the R2250 districts, and is exempt from CEQA as a class 32 infill exemption. Just as a quick clarification, the staff report actually doesn't note that the project site also sort of in the southern portion of the site is zoned R2250, but the subject site is zoned both C3 and R2250, just to clarify. The project site is located on the south side of Broadway between Cedar and Belmont Streets. It's the highlighted green site. The site would normally be able to accommodate 30 units pursuant to zoning requirements. The City Council recently approved a 324% density bonus to be able to construct the 127 on-site units. The project is 100% affordable and located close to major transit stops. As such, the project is eligible for additional height, no parking requirements or no required parking, up to 4 concessions, and an unlimited amount of waivers. The City Council recently approved a density bonus and housing plan for the project and granted 4 concessions and 3 waivers. The concessions were for a reduction in the minimum studio unit size from 600 square feet to 460 square feet, elimination of the CUP requirement for ground floor residential units, a reduction in various setbacks, and a reduction in common open space from 16,450 to about half that at 8,433 square feet. Waivers were granted for increases in lot coverage from 50% to 58%, and floor area ratio, and a reduction in the amount of additional open space required. This shows the site plan of the project. Along Broadway, the subject site is zone C3, and no street front or street side setback is required when the site is developed with commercial uses. A commercial development along Broadway is developed with little, if any, setback, and that's existing commercial development. The project received concessions from various setback requirements, including some front and street side setbacks. Given that the majority of the development along Broadway is commercial and the granted setback concessions to assist the project to be developed as affordable housing, the location of the project, of the proposed project, is appropriate. This is the common open space map. The common open space is shown with the sort of olive green coloring. A common open space is located on the ground level courtyard and on 3 roof decks. Additionally, the alley east of the project site is being converted to a pedestrian paseo as part of the project and will also be used for common open space. The courtyard, which is, if you can see my arrow right here, the courtyard is easily accessible from all units, includes seating, and through landscaping and other design means, which I can show you on the landscape plans, provides appropriate privacy for adjacent ground level units. The roof decks, which are here, here, and here, and this is the top level. The roof decks are designed with different activities in mind. The pedestrian paseo, which is this area here, will be improved with a decorative paved path at both ends, leading to a large patio in the center. Will be landscaped, will include bike racks and benches and decorative lighting. The project was granted a concession with regard to the amount of common open space for the project. A waiver was also granted to provide less than the amount of additional open space than required for the project as well. I am going to step back 1 second and show you the site plan again. There is a 92 space parking garage, subterranean, proposed as part of the project. 22 spaces will be used by the tenants of the adjacent affordable housing project, and you can sort of see a shadow of them right here. Access to the garage will be from a new east-west fire lane and access easement along the southern portion of the site. So this access easement is in this area here, and access to the parking garage is right here. You go under. I did want to say that it was important to note that because this is an affordable housing project located within 1/2 mile of a major transit stop, that no parking is actually required for this project. They are providing parking, but none is required. Landscape plans and fencing are shown on this slide. Landscaping within the courtyard will be enhanced with drought-tolerant planting and other amenities. Fencing is appropriate to the fencing design is appropriate to the design of the project. So the courtyard again is here, and you'll see a tree, some seating areas, landscaping, which buffers the courtyard from the adjacent residential units. The paseo is here with the walkway here and here. The central patio here. There is a bike rack here, as well as in this area, and then landscaping to the side. The proposed project is 5 stories and 60 feet in height, which is higher than adjacent or nearby development along Broadway, but is consistent with permitted building heights in the downtown specific plan. A project may receive a height increase up to 3 stories or 33 feet in height if located within 1/2 mile of a major transit stop. This project has taken advantage of this increase in height and stories. Along with this, the project also received waivers to allow greater lot coverage and floor area ratio. These 2 items, along with the additional height and stories, all increase the mass and scale of the project. But as I described more fully in the staff report, the recessed balcony volumes, the variety of facade material, and the strong base, middle, and top design of the project successfully breaks up the building mass into smaller components. This is the Broadway elevation or the front elevation. The entrance to the project is in this area. And this is the Paseo. This is the other street elevation on Cedar. The easement is in this area here. The south elevation is the rear elevation. And the driveway to the subterranean parking is here. Trash and other mechanical type of necessities are here, and the pedestrian paseo here. This is the east elevation, what you would see from the pedestrian paseo, as well as the adjacent affordable housing project that was approved by the Historic Preservation Commission last week. Then we have a couple building perspectives. This perspective is basically taken from the corner of Cedar and Broadway. Again, this is the front of the building, the pedestrian paseo here, and then this is a little bit of the Harrower's Village affordable housing projects that was approved last week. Cedar perspective, and this is right here, and then the easement is shown here. And this is sort of a view of both projects taken together with the pedestrian paseo here. So the project that we're talking about tonight is this right here. Staff is supportive of the design and detailing of the project. The project has a crisp, modern design, and the stucco brick and metal cladding is internally consistent and appropriately detailed. Windows are recessed into their openings and reinforce the style of the building. Finally, the variety of cladding materials used on the project adds interest to the building. Staff is suggesting one condition of approval related to the project. And that condition, or that proposed condition, is that staff shall review and approve details regarding the interface between adjoining facade cladding materials, the treatment of inside and outside corners. So that's our proposed condition. Finally, as I've mentioned before, on May 20th last week, the Historic Preservation Commission reviewed the adjacent project at 920 East Broadway. They also reviewed the project that you are reviewing this evening in an advisory manner. Sorry about that. The commission made several suggestions regarding this project. Those suggestions included eliminating the palm trees. And the palm trees, it's a little difficult to see, but the palm trees are here and here. There was question about the practicality of the mound within the courtyard, and that they were referring to this area here. So this is the courtyard, and sort of in the central portion of the courtyard, there's a landscaped mound, circular landscape mound, landscaping and a tree in the center, and then benches sort of around it. And the commission questioned the practicality of that, particularly with the limited amount of space within the courtyard. There was a suggestion to keep the paseo open and more simple. So this area here. And I need to proofread my slide as well, because there wasn't a parking concern. There was a parking concern with regard to the amount of parking for the site. And I just wanted to remind everybody that actually state law prohibits us in this situation from requiring any parking. The applicants are providing 92 parking spaces in a subterranean garage. Most of that parking is devoted or will be devoted to the residents of this particular project. 20 of the parking spaces will be dedicated to residents of the adjacent affordable housing complex. So while there may be some concerns related to parking, there really is not anything we can do. It's a state law. So that concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to go back to any slide that you wanted to see again or answer questions, or actually Mike Fortney wanted to speak a little bit about the project. He is the housing staff member who's shepherding this project through the approval process. And then we have several consultants on the line as well. Any questions?
Let's go ahead and hear from Mike, and then we can address board member questions.
Okay. Do you want me to stop sharing my screen?
Why don't you just leave it up for a little bit, so we can refer to it if we need to.
Okay. Mike?
Now, can you hear me? Okay, my apologies. Good afternoon, board members. Good afternoon. Excuse me, Chair Welch. I'm Mike Fortney. I'm the housing project manager for the city of Glendale. We learned about the potential acquisition of this site back in the summer of 2019, and negotiated the acquisition $12.1 million to Tobin World for both 900 and 920. Closed on the property, I believe it was Halloween 2019. We then wrapped up another affordable housing project we were doing across town, and then issued an RFQ separate for this site as we did for 920. We got 12 different developers to bid on this site. We ultimately selected Meta Housing to partner with us to develop 900 East Broadway. The project, excuse me, next door, 920, we partnered with Abode Communities to do that historic property. The City Council Housing Authority approved an E&A with Meta Housing on December 1st of last year. And then just a couple of weeks ago, May 4th, the Housing Authority and the City Council under joint, approved not only the density bonus, the CEQA exemptions, but a letter of loan commitment, right of entry, lease option. So we are investing on just the 900 site itself, $15 million to get this project done. So everyone on staff, the city council, very, very supportive, very excited, quite frankly, to do this. This is the largest project that we've done in probably 20 some years. We have another one even larger in the works, but this will be the largest for a little bit. I don't need to get into detail in terms of project costs or how affordable these units are, but I have all that information. If you're curious to know about any of that, I'm very happy to tell you. But I did want to introduce or let you know Taylor Rasmussen and Allison Levy are here with Meta Housing if you have questions for the developer. And KFA is the architect that the Housing Authority hired to do the entitlement. And John Arnold is on the phone, and he can talk to you about the entitlement package. Really, quite frankly, he's very familiar with the project. So just wanted to say those words and again, offer to provide any information that I can be interested in here.
Okay, thank you very much. So yeah, we'll let the architect and the owner go when we open a public hearing. But I have a couple questions I want to ask either you or Mr. Kiesel. Are these two projects, are they going to be operated together as though it's one community, or are they going to be operated separately as two separate communities?
I can answer that. It's up to you, Roger.
Okay. They're two separate communities, and they'll be operated separately. There will be some cooperation in terms of the parking arrangement, as well as also the pedestrian paseo area. Is there anything else?
How about the
sorry?
rest of the open? How about the rest of the open space? Are residents going to be either to go and use either open space?
No, there are the traditional open space, the traditional common open space is actually gated. So the shared space is the pedestrian paseo, but on either side there are gates for each resident of the respective projects.
Okay. And did staff have any thoughts or reactions to the Historic Preservation Commission's recommendations or thoughts about the landscaping issues?
No, not necessarily specifically. I think staff understood where the board was coming from. And it's a balance, just as an example of the mound in the central courtyard. It does provide quite a bit of seating for residents who want to get outside and enjoy the weather or the company of others. We totally understand the fact that the mound may break up some of that common open space in a way that if the landscaping were level, wouldn't be the case. So I guess that's where we'd fall with that.
Okay.
Roger, if I may, just
sure.
One of the comments was on the palm trees in the front. I'm not a huge fan or not a fan of palm trees, but we have two gorgeous palm trees in front of 920 East Broadway, the historic structures. I mean, they're just beautiful trees. And I thought the two palm trees in front of our building at 900, I thought, and John Arnold, the architect, probably comment on it, but I thought it was, one of the ideas was trying to kind of connect the two projects with some similarities, including those palm trees. So that was just one other thought I had on the historic comments.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Do any other board members have questions? Okay, Board Member Smith, and then followed by Board Member Simoni.
Thank you so much. So my question, which might be teasing this apart too hard, too closely, is to which property will the alley belong? Which property is developing the alley, and which property will be responsible for its care?
Mike, you can step in if I say this wrong, but the development of the alley will be with this project, the project that you're looking at currently. And I think the maintenance is shared between both projects. Am I correct, Mike?
You have it exactly correct, Roger. We don't have the agreement between Meta and Abode yet, but that's the intention that 900 would develop the sale and both 900 and 920 would share.
Okay, thanks. And my other question was regarding CEQA. So are these projects one, or is each a separate project for the purposes of CEQA? even though one depends on the other for parking, which isn't required by law?
We looked at both projects as one for CEQA purposes. Even though they are two separate projects, we looked at them together as one. CEQA doesn't analyze parking anymore.
I recognize that. I'm just saying that's how they're really interrelated, it sounds.
Right. And there will be a formalized agreement regarding the parking. And I don't think that has been worked out yet either, correct, Mike? But there will be a formalized agreement.
So if I can jump in, so you're saying that the CEQA exemption that's part of this is just for this project, or it's for both?
Well, the CEQA exemption is for this project. It was a class 22 infill exemption. The other project was exempt from both the CEQA from a historic standpoint as well as an infill standpoint.
Thanks very much. Back to the chair to recognize the next person, I guess. Thank you.
Okay, Board Member Simonian, go ahead.
Here, and this may be more of a question for the city attorney or maybe Vilya, but in regards to the 3 stories of the 3 extra stories as an incentive for being within a half a mile of a major transit stop. Is that 3 stories only for 100% affordable project, or would it apply to other SB 1818 projects or AB 2345 projects that are within a half a mile of a major transit stop?
I believe it's for 100% affordable, but maybe Jillian can correct me. You there, Jillian?
Sounded like Ms. Nukian was.
I apologize. I had to shift screens. I'm going to allow Ms. Nukian to address the issue.
Oh.
I apologize. I was trying to get unmuted and I was not able to. Good evening, board members. This is Yvette Nukian from the City Attorney's Office. To answer your question, Board Member Simonian, this would only apply to 100% affordable projects within a half mile of a transit stop. Half mile of a major transit stop.
Thank you.
Board Member Minas? You're muted.
Sorry, for the purpose of providing the 92 space parking in this facility, how many levels of subterranean parking would you be considering? How deep would be?
It's a level and a half of parking underneath the building.
And then park at 2 levels?
It's about a level and a half under. So 1.5 levels, 2 levels, yeah.
So, I mean, the upper deck will be sticking out of the ground like by 4 or 5 feet or something like that?
No, I think it's pretty subterranean. Initially, they had a design where there was some parking on grade, and staff looked at it, the consultants looked at it, and we really and it ended up being the case, revising the plans such that the common open space, the community rooms, and some of the residential units were on grade, and the parking was really all subterranean.
I see. Parking in 2 levels or just 1 level with high ceiling?
It's 1.5 levels down.
Nice. All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? Okay, so I'm not sure who's going to speak for the applicant here, but I would like to follow our normal routine, which is to allow the applicant minutes to give a brief introduction and presentation of the project for us to begin the public hearing.
In this case, representing the City and Housing Authority, we are the applicant. We are the ones who are entitling it. So with that, I'd like to introduce John Arnold, who is the architect who we've hired to walk you through the design.
Okay. Mr. Arnold, you're up.
Hey, good evening, everybody. Thanks for having me. My name is John Arnold. I'm with KFA. We're a multifamily housing architect. So I'll just go through the planning department issues, the height and the units. Those are all the program. So I just want to walk through what our design intent was and what we were going for as far as effect and style and those kinds of things. So I think what would be best, Mike, if you want to, or whoever's in charge of the controls, is to bring up either the elevations or the 3D view. Probably the 3D view from the corner of Cedar would be good.
Let me do that.
Actually, yeah, either one of those is good. Yep, that's right there. So our, yep, that one right there. Great, thank you. So our jumping off.
Sorry.
That's okay. I'll start talking. Our jumping off point was basically because the two projects are not joined technically, but they are joined aesthetically. And we knew this building was a little bit bigger than the historic building next door. And then the historic building next door has a lot of gravitas. It's just a great old building. And we wanted to respect that building as much as possible without mimicking it. We wanted to be traditional in our fenestration, traditional in our massing, and as Roger said earlier, a top, a middle, and a bottom. And we really were going for a building next door is symmetrical, and we wanted to have some vestige of symmetrical without being symmetrical. Symmetrical buildings of this size tend to look like hospitals if you don't watch what you're doing. So we were looking to be a traditional style, which you can see in the fenestration, the wall to window proportion. So you can see all the corners have meet to the walls, and we really wanted to keep that traditional look to it. We also wanted to minimize the effect of the 5 stories. So we put a sort of a mansard roof on the top. We wanted to accentuate the corners without putting towers on them. So you can see that on the corner on Cedar and Broadway, we made it a special element. It is clad in a light blondish brick, and then put the trellis on the top, which is an outdoor roof deck. And then on the other side, on the alley, we wanted to have the same effect, but a little bit smaller. We actually looked at a lot of French chateaus to look at what cues they had about how they made them symmetrical without being symmetrical. So you can see the two ends are kind of the same, but not quite the same. And we did that very intentionally. The two corners, actually all the corners going around are clad in brick. The base is clad in brick, and the center is a white stucco. And then the top is a brown colored standing seam sheet metal. And then there are brown accents throughout, especially along the base. You can see with the storefront that highlights the porosity of the base. On the right side, in the image that you're seeing right now, is the entrance to the building and a community area. The left side is also a community area, so we wanted to make sure that wherever there was porosity at the bottom, that was a public space. The middle is the manager's unit on the ground floor. We set back the building quite a bit more than Roger mentioned this. The requirement was not to have any setback whatsoever, but we didn't think that was respectful to the building next door, which has about a 23-foot setback, I believe, for the Harrower Lab, and we're set back at about 20. So, and that is all, so we really wanted to have that setback along the whole block that really played with the historic aspect of what's going on in the block. And if you want to go through, I think that covers you, Roger, if you could go to the elevations, I think we can walk through those. So you can see this primary elevation, which is on Broadway. Again, the 5th floor is recessed and colored differently and darker to make it recede. The base is accentuated with brown highlights and brick on both corners. And you can see on this that the corners are kind of the same, but not quite the same, and to break up the symmetry. Can you go to the next cedar elevation, please? The cedar elevation continues on the same theme, brick on the 2 corners, white in the middle. We did recess the middle part of the building back quite a bit. And then one point that was brought up earlier about the 1.5 stories, the site slopes about 4.5 feet from Broadway down to the alley. So the back part, so the ground, the 1st floor is level with Broadway, but in the back, the garage does rise up a bit, so it kind of shoulders as it approaches the alley. And you can see that in that line, that white line at the base. That also allows us to have enough room, head height for our transformer, which is at the lower left of the image you're seeing now. And so that's how that 1.5 stories is actually 2 levels of parking, but it goes down only about 16, 17 feet. You can see we're continuing with the theme, with the corners knocked out. We're really knocking out corners is a really effective tool to make a building feel smaller, which we understand it's a 5-story building in a neighborhood that is essentially not 5 stories. Mostly 3 stories is what's behind us. So we used some tricks of the trade to make the building feel smaller. And then we used the basic elements of punched openings, which means a massive wall with windows inserted in a very traditional way with the windows recessed, as Roger noted earlier. Then we have a simple detail with a diamond pattern set on a simple picket rail to give it a more of a traditional feel. We do consider this contemporary, but you can obviously see that it's not, angular contemporary, but it's a contemporary interpretation of traditional architecture. I think that's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you very much. Just for your information, Mr. Arnold, I served back in the 1990s as a board member and president of the West Hollywood Community Housing Corporation. So KFA has did a lot of the projects for us back in those days. So I'm quite familiar with your work. Do any board members have questions for Mr. Arnold? Go ahead, Mr. Simonian.
Yes, good evening. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I had a question in regards to the rooftop decks and the trellis material. And it does a nice job of breaking up the corners and reducing the mass in the corners. It certainly does. And so is there another function, a more practical function as well for the trellis? Is there a covering that goes over it, or how does it kind of function as an open space? If you could kind of elaborate on that a bit.
So it is open. So each open space, I don't know them off the top of my head, each open space was programmed differently, and that was the loungy open space. So that one would be sheltered, where people can, there's seating up there. So this trellis would be used as a shading element, but it would certainly not be anywhere near opaque. So it would be a dappled shade, whether there was a canopy hanging from the bottom of it, which is pretty common these days, something that's retractable and de minimis, it would be something that would be additive, like an interior design element. So the trellis would be a shading element for seating underneath it. That answers your question.
The other question I had in regards to the mansard roof, the way it's angled back, which steps back in a sense of pulling back the mass, which is quite nice. Are there little balconies that are created along the, I guess, stucco facade and the mansard?
Very, very small. Very small. They aren't full balconies. Oh, actually, you know what? They are full balconies. They have to be full balconies. Every unit has a balcony in the building.
Like, in other words, they're accessible as a private open space through the unit?
Yes, there are portions of it, not the whole length, but right in front of the doorways. That is a piece of private balcony right there. Yes.
It's functional versus a Romeo and Juliet kind of a balcony.
Yes, it's functional. It has to be per the planning code, which we complied with for balconies.
Board Member Smith, you have a question?
Yes, thank you. I have too many mouses here. I was looking at the wrong computer. So thank you very much for this presentation. I also have worked with KFA on the gas company lofts 1,000 years ago, before you were born, I think.
I don't think so.
So I'm in looking, I noticed it most on the upper story plans. It looks like a box sticking out of a few units. Is there some sort of, I know the HVAC compressors, I guess, are on the roof. Are you using the split units that you're using on the historic? So do they go through the walls?
They will be the split units. There'll be the condenser on the roof. They're connected with a line of coolant, and then inside the unit in the ceiling, there will be a air distribution unit. So there's no visible mechanical equipment through the wall. So there's nothing like that. No, it's not that split system.
Thanks very much. I had that question, but I was just watching the historic preservation meeting. Thanks very much.
And by the way, the gas company loss was my first project I worked at this office in 1999.
No.
Yes, I did the bathroom tile details, but I digress.
They turned out nice.
Okay, Board Member Minas, you have a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much for a beautiful presentation of the architectural aspects of the building. And I had just one minor question. For the purpose of safety of the rooftop deck, I noticed on the profile of the building, looking from Broadway, the north west corner of the open space, is it surrounded by glass? I noticed that. What kind of safety do you have for the rooftop open space at the edge of the building?
So if you're talking about guardrails, there'll be a guardrail. It's a parapet, and it switches from parapet in the sections that will be regular pickets. So that it has to be 42 inches tall with planters removed, separated from it. So that's a standard parapet and guardrail detail.
I see. But on the profile that you presented, looking from Broadway, it appeared like glassy type of structure, if I'm not mistaken.
There's no glass. I want to see what you're referring to.
From Broadway.
I don't have the drawings open in front of me.
I think it might be the top of the trellis element that maybe that's what's being referred to. It almost looks like
windows.
Yeah, windows or clear.
Yeah. Got it. Yeah, that's the trellis. The trellis goes to the edge of the roof deck. So that's just and it's in line with the wall. So it's just a continuation of the wall, but it's all open. So there's no glass. But you can see the on the far right at the top, you can see there's open guardrail, and then that transitions to a solid parapet. So it's still the same guardrail height. So that's the guardrail right there.
I see. Thank you.
Thanks.
Any other board member comments or questions? Okay. Do we have any public callers on this item?
Chair Welch, at this point in time, we do not have any public callers.
Okay. Does anyone from the housing agency want to speak at all about the project? They're welcome to if they would like to.
Chair Wells, this is Mike Forney again. Were you inviting the developer?
Yes, the developer, yes,
okay.
yes.
Okay,
If
Taylor?
they want it, not required.
can jump in quickly. Good evening, board members. My name is Taylor Rasmussen. I'm a development director with Meta Housing. Appreciate all the insightful comments this evening. For those of you who do not know Meta, we really focus primarily on ground up new construction of affordable housing throughout the state of California. Roughly completed 80 projects to date, generating about 7,000 affordable units for the state. We have had the pleasure of building another project within your community there. Most of you are probably familiar with ACE 121, just down the street. Very excited to get moving on this one. We've been working closely with Mike and his team on the financing. We submitted an application for competitive tax credits earlier this month. So fingers crossed, we will be awarded credits and bonds, which would position us to start construction and break ground on this deal early 2022. So again, super excited to get moving here and appreciate everybody's time this evening. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So with no callers, I guess I will close the public hearing and we can move on to board member comments. I will call on board member Minas. How about you could start us off tonight?
Well, I appreciate the work of the staff and I also appreciate the work of the architect. I believe that the low-income housing projects are in dire need in the city of Glendale, and it is going to be a very large plus for the community. I like the architectural drawing. I like the open spaces they're providing and the landscape around the building, and also the setbacks that the architects have considered for these projects, although was not required by the city. And I also like the recess on the cedar side of the project. It gives a little bit more space, for viewing. Overall, I welcome this project, and it's a nice, great job, great improvement to the city of Glendale.
Thank you. Board Member Smith, would you like to go next?
Sure, thank you very much. So, yeah, this was a very big package to review. I believe it was over 600 pages. It really helped to get it printed out. So I applaud staff in that decision, absolutely. And I know they work hard on this. I have experience, as you may know, with rehabilitation for tax credits as well as low-income housing and projects that are both. So I was very interested in this. I do have a large amount of comments. I'm concerned about the alley. The alley is part of the historic setting of the of Harrower Labs building, and normally turning an alley, which is part of the larger setting, into a pedestrian paseo needs to be undertaken pretty lightly. I was a little, I think it looks lovely. I was a little disappointed that the paving and so forth was kind of busy in the alley, in that it's an alley and alleys should be alleys. The most concerning item, and I don't mean to start off with a minor thing that's that's a picky point, but I am, and it's the streetlight standards that are pedestrian height, and they're very close to the historic building. I would absolutely not have them anywhere near the historic building because it will confuse people, even though they're contemporary. There's never been anything like that in the alley. So that's my first big recommendation. My second very big recommendation to our hardworking city colleagues is to remove the ivy at once, because that ivy is rabid and is damaging the building as we sit here. I know it's been brought up before to City Council, but the sooner that is done using the gentlest manner possible, the better.
Ms. Smith, are you referring to the 920 building?
Yes, sorry,
Okay,
I apologize. Yeah. Then
yeah, that will be done. That's part of the project.
Right, but it should be done as soon as
ASAP.
possible is what I'm saying. Yeah, it actually
Okay.
can damage the brick building. And I noticed the brick building was reinforced, thank goodness, but thank you for the clarification. So one of my biggest, oh, go ahead.
If I may, the vines were removed from 920 already last week.
Really? I mean, oh, thank you.
And I want to apologize for the time it took to do it, but it was just getting the right folks to do it, get that contract through the city. But we absolutely took that comment seriously. We got those vines down.
I really appreciate that. I wish we had known that, and I wish the DRB had known. So thank you so much. So one of my biggest, I didn't speak up on the other project, even though that is my specialty. The proposed color, which I get that it's supposed to be really differentiated and really modern, is that it really calls attention to itself, being this very light color. In the absence of another passerby today, I asked my cleaning lady to look at the plans, and I asked her which building looked more important, and she absolutely thought the big white hospital building was the more important. And I apologize to the architects. She did mistake it for a hospital. I think it would be really important to use building materials in the same color range or value as those of the historic building. And also the addition, I know you're taking your cues from your addition, but the addition color is just too prominent. There are lots of new materials that could be a sort of color range or value that I think would call less attention to itself, and it absolutely does not need to be brick, and it doesn't need to be thin brick in my book, but nobody's asking that specific thing. I think that the exterior finish palette needs to be revised to be more compatible with the important brick building that's next door, and the brick building next door, unfortunately, the city submitted a very complete evaluation of the building that's being demolished, which was helpful. It was about 40 pages too long, but where was I going with this? The building, the Harrower Labs building was found eligible for the National Register, and the only thing that comes up is locally designated. So also as part of the tax credit project, it will be listed in the National Register. So building a giant building that is semi-related to it immediately across the alley that will no longer be an alley, it will be part of the project. I strongly recommend that the color palette be toned down so that it pays more deference to the historic building. And that doesn't mean matchy-matchy, it just means harmonious. I think it can be a lot of very modern materials in a color range that is more sympathetic to the historic building. So I looked at the comprehensive design guidelines as they relate to multifamily residential projects. And I understand the architects are working hard to reduce the scale, proportion, and monumentality. I think that darker colors might do a better job of it, not necessarily darker, but more earth tone and more terracotta sort of color palette. Also the hierarchy of window groupings, I recognize that every unit needs to have its own private small balcony and so forth, but I was really hoping for a better hierarchy of that fenestration so that it reduced the apparent mass as it went toward the top of the building. I think some other vehicles like string courses, simple cornice elements would increase the building's horizontal orientation and help it not seem so giant and tall next to the little two-story building. I usually laugh when in presentations it's said that a new building has the same floor plate and ceiling heights as the historic building next door. In this case, I recognize that the historic building has a very high parapet, but nothing really aligns. There could be something that could integrate those a little bit better. The configuration of entries, I'm really thrilled that they're not overly monumental, but I have to say that that they're a little bit lost. I also asked the nice lady who cleans my house if she were a pizza delivery man, where she would go looking at the beautiful renderings, and she said she had no idea where the doors were. So I hope that will be helpful. I saw there were slim letters denoting the address, but somewhat more sequence of entrance of entry than none, I think would be helpful. Also, the courtyard, which I recognize how tight the space is and how many units are being put in there, and I absolutely believe we need more housing and affordable housing in Glendale. I noticed that the plan for the courtyard exactly does not align with any of the openings to the Harrower building, where they share that alley. And even if it were moved up just a little bit to the north, the opening, it would have some relation to the north opening on the Harrower building between the buildings, because it sort of negates it. It makes it seem as though this is the more important building. So relating it to the existing context, while I know this has been really worked on a lot, I think it's a fundamental problem in the plan. So I do see almost uninterrupted bays at the second, third, and fourth floor in the center of the Broadway facade. It's close to 90 feet with very, very minor insets, and it really reads as a big giant building by doing that. I think it would be helpful if there were some other mechanism. It could just be finishes, I don't know, to create more of a shadow, or just better animation to those really, really long elevations. I see that it's perceptible how much that was that was attempted on this, and I know this was probably a bear of a project, but the surrounding context ends up being nominal and not really part of it. I tied this to all of these different concepts in our design guidelines. So scale, proportion, and monumentality was F1, 2, 3, and 4 that didn't really, to me, answer the requirements. Now I'm looking for a different mouse for my different computer. The materials board, which I recognize this was a big project and a big submittal. The materials board is super vague. I bet you can guess that I'm going to comment on the vinyl windows, because it is specifically listed in the design guidelines that projects have high quality materials. I recognize this is a tight budget, but I think there is a big problem with how long those vinyl windows will last. They'll probably last longer than they do elsewhere, but I'm pretty surprised that they are even recommended. The materials board, which is pretty minimal, doesn't really detail the metal cladding. I appreciated learning that it's a standing seam roof. The stucco detail is very vague, and it doesn't really depict a deeply inset window as described. There is no detail for the brick or the top floor cladding. There aren't any manufacturers or models or sizes for the proposed doors or windows. I can't tell if these are a bunch of sliders, if the renderings show some bottom-up shades, or if the bottom half of the windows are opaque. So it would be helpful to have a more complete submittal. And I recognize that this is a pretty big project, so I would appreciate seeing it back. And it's not because it's terrible. I am pretty disappointed with the brick veneer, but I think it could be a different brick colored thing. I noticed that in the design guidelines under N color, this is for multifamily, it says use colors complementary with adjacent structures. And the natural environment, earth tones are encouraged. So I think the full white natural bricks aren't really being honored by these white bricks. I did think they looked nicer when I looked at some examples of them, but I just don't think, I do not believe that the building being white and white on white and white trimmed with white with a little brown really reduces its apparent mass or respects the building next door. So I saw that there, without those details, it's hard to tell. Also, the design guidelines under N color number 2, it says use of the following colors / materials is discouraged. And A, the first one, says highly reflective materials and colors. And white is pretty much the most reflective color there is. So I was disappointed to see that, because I think that this building, while special, could just take a back seat to what else is on the block a little bit better, and it wouldn't call so much attention to itself. And hopefully our housekeeper won't go there when she has a cut finger. Also under finished materials, it talks under I-5 about reinforcing the architecture of the building well integrated with natural materials used in the overall project. And for all the good things this project does, I do not think that was achieved. It's L. Finished materials. Number 6 says use of indigenous materials such as native rock or stone is encouraged. It's just encouraged, but I think it could help make this a little more human. And the difference in the colors and materials need to be a little bit more pronounced to comply with L7, which is a variety of materials to enhance the overall design and create visual interest. I do note that in the design guidelines, actually mansard roofs are not recommended. I can move to that item. I do see what was proposed. I wish there were some sight lines drawn so that we could see if that top floor entirely disappears or if it disappears from certain places. Since we don't know who the manufacturer of the windows is, I couldn't really say whether or not they might last longer than most vinyl windows. The decorative fences, it was not very clear where they would be. I found a few places where I thought it was pretty obvious that it would be proposed, but it was unclear. And there are a bunch of specific things in the city's design guidelines for multifamily regarding windows and doors, and it says that they need to coordinate with the architectural design of the building. And unfortunately, while we recognize you have a lot of window openings and there will be a big window budget, I do think they need to be more specific and better detailed, and hopefully a higher quality material, because where the design guidelines say high quality material, it's not defined, but I'm reasonably certain that vinyl wouldn't qualify as that. The design guidelines also talk about window articulation such as sills, trim, awning should be employed to improve the facade of the building. Even I would consider something like those fixed shades that are solid to assist with maybe on certain sides to just give the building a little bit more animation. Under K, windows and doors, number 7, it does say to present wall surfaces from being monotonously flat where appropriate to the architectural style. They should be inset from the building to create shade and shadow. And unless those windows are super thick dual glazed windows, I don't believe that they're recessed 1.5 to 2 inches from the face. And I'm just guessing based on what we received. The roof forms, I get where you're going with it, and I do think that if it could step in maybe somewhat more, it would be more, it's almost like a Hollywood Regency kind of roof, but it doesn't quite make it. The design guidelines under G3 state superficial roof forms such as mansard are not found on well-designed buildings and are strongly discouraged. I think those words are a little bit strong, but there isn't a big precedent for that here in Glendale. The lighting under K1, it says minimize impacts on neighbors and maintain design quality. I would just absolutely keep those pedestrian height street lights in the alley away from the historic building. I'm concerned about the safety of the historic building during this excavation process and so forth. I'm not a structural engineer. I guess I won't speak to it, but if that building suffers damage, someone will be wagging her finger at you, city. I think the most important thing is that this building, while a challenging project, doesn't relate to the historic building as much as it should in its materials, in its details, and it needs to have a little bit more animation if possible without going crazy. It doesn't mean a lot of applied ornament, but those are my strong feelings. Thanks very much.
Okay, thank you. And Board Member Simonian.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to really thank everyone for putting this package together so quickly. As Mike was going through the timeline of how quickly the city, got the property under contract, how quickly they closed escrow, they or we, however we want to describe it, and how quickly it went through the process to design a building of this scale. I must really say it is fast and it is done well, and it is not an easy process to take a historic building and then to put a larger multifamily project next to it and to really put together a fine package in such little amount of time. So I really like to thank Mike and his team and staff and et cetera for doing this so quickly and really putting together such a nice package. I do think the building is well designed, and I do think it fits in well. But I must premise that by saying we have an absolute housing shortage, right? And here we have a 100% affordable project that by state law has certain rights and incentives granted to it. And then we have a design team that's been working very closely with the city to minimize that height, to minimize the mass as much as possible, and to really integrate a successful building into the surrounding context by not just having a square, by not just having a 5-story mass, by breaking it up, having undulation in the facade, breaking up the corners, pulling back the 5th floor units, right, with the mansard area, creating an abundance of open space, although it's clustered in different areas of the building, I should say. It is nicely integrated into the design, and it's, let's face it, at the end of the day, they're going to be used at the same time. So it's quite nice to have different set of common areas. In regards to its really, I guess, integration, into the area. I could see where the architect was going with this, with the brick veneer as a way of tying it in with the existing historic building next to it. And as far as the window sizes and openings are concerned, they do have similar proportionality to the historic building. Now, if you just got to kind of look at the windows as a group, right? So if you kind of look at the double windows for each unit along Broadway, they more or less have that same kind of a proportionality as the brick opening. So I believe that's where the architect was going, and I think it was done quite nice. In regards to the paseo, I think, for example, in the city of Pasadena, there's a lot of paseos, and they're quite nice. And I think when they are landscaped and they're integrated with amenities, they actually end up being much more usable on the long run with the community versus a bare bones alley. So I actually liked the way, and I think it was positive the way that the alley has been amenitized, since an amenitized alley tends to be a used alley. And so we have, for example, some there was the old chess park, let's say Alpha Brand, that really wasn't really utilized as much. But then as you kind of see other paseos and surrounding cities, et cetera, that have a lot of amenities, sitting down areas, areas for refuge, areas for shade, they end up being used quite often. So I think that was quite successful as well. In regards to the center courtyard, I do think it is a good idea to kind of keep the mound. It will muffle the noise of that courtyard, number one. Number two is it provides the housing. And number three, it breaks up the visual kind of direct sights from one side to the other. So I disagree with the historic commission there in that recommendation. I also appreciate Mike's comments regarding the palm trees kind of being in the same family and the same landscape design palette. And so I've been kind of looking around some pictures, and I now understand kind of where Mike's coming from that. So I think that's fine as well. In regards to the, I think, brick veneer, I think it is a bit white. I think if that veneer were to darken up a bit, especially at its base, it might, I think, integrate a bit better with the historic building next door. I would not change the openings. I'm not suggesting changing anything of the sort, but as far as a color is concerned, I do think if it was perhaps even a similar, I don't want to say similar color because that's going to look really awkward when you have a new brick next to an old brick, but some sort of a brick veneer or stone veneer that seems to have some of the existing hues and colors of the existing, but integrated in maybe some sort of a peppered way, I think would mesh well. Not a monotonous color, but some sort of a veneer that has multiple colors in it, let's just say. So I think that would help. In regards to the corners, again, that's a stone veneer. The developer and the city is spending money on a veneer versus a stucco. And if it was a bit darker, I wouldn't quite go into the natural hues, let's say, but if it was just a bit darker, it would, I think, kind of add to the texture and add really to the integration as well, as far as maybe tying it in with the historic building next door. I don't have a particular opinion about the vinyl windows. There are nice quality vinyl windows, and I believe as an affordable project, those are one of the factors that we need to consider is affordability. And there's certainly a lot of vinyl windows out there that are nice. And so I like the proportionality, though. I do think that's proportioned nicely. So overall, I support the project. I think it's done well. I think it's thought out. I think it's integrated quite nicely, and I think it's one of the nicer affordable projects that we'll have in our city. And so I do support it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Simone. For my part, again, as I indicated earlier, I've had some experience working in affordable housing. I was almost 10 years with the West Hollywood Community Housing Corporation, and we did some wonderful projects, including one right here in Glendale. Killer for Flamang, as they were once known back in the day when I was working with them, are really the go-to people. They've done so many projects, so I think the city is in good hands with them as an architect. And I concur with my board members that the presentation has been tremendous. I think that's the amount of work that has been done and the progress made on this very, very needed project has been tremendous. So congratulations to all of the staff and all of the people who've been part of the project. I love the project. I think it's great. You know, yes, we can nitpick a few things here. I think that the way that the architect has pulled in just a smidgen of some of those colors from the brick, you know, and represented it in some of the details in the mansard roof and some of the window treatments at the ground level, I think is well done. It's not copying it. It's not being disrespectful. I think it's handled with a nice balance. Can we tweak those colors a little bit? Yes, I don't disagree with Board Member Simonian and Board Member Smith about that. I think perhaps we can consider something as either a condition or a consideration for potentially some of that brick, particularly at the ground level, maybe bearing that up a little bit with the peppery look. I think even the Historic Preservation Commission was talking a little bit about that during their hearing. So perhaps we can do something there. But generally speaking, I think that the project is great. Board Member Smith's comment about the entryway, I think there's something there. I think the design could use a little punching up there at the entryway to make it a little bit more prominent. It does kind of disappear, but I wouldn't go too much. I think that's you know, it's just a little bit off from where it would be perfect. Let's see what else. I think really those are my only notes. Otherwise, I also didn't have an issue with the vinyl windows. I know the Historic Preservation Commission talked about the windows a lot in their deliberations, but I think I agree with Mr. Simonian that you know, vinyl windows can be done very well these days, and the project is an affordable housing project. Based on what I heard at the hearing the other day or last week, the cost per unit of this is already very high, so I wouldn't want to impose conditions that would in any way increase the cost of the project. So those are my comments. I fully support the project. I think it's terrific. I think that it will be a great addition. I think the team has done a good job and the architect has done a good job. And, you know, if there's some consensus from some of the board members on some of these other conditions relating mostly to color, it seems to me, I'd be open to hearing that and seeing how we can move this project on.
Well, Mr. Chair, I would actually like to move forward with maybe a motion with a consideration for the color. And I'll try to holistically put in some thoughts that we've talked about, and we'll see if the motion has any support. I move to support the project and to approve the project with staff's condition, of course. In addition, a consideration for the architect to consider a darker color brick base to be more harmonious with the existing historic building next door. And also to perhaps consider the corner colors as well, a different brick color, as a condition to slightly to emphasize the entrance of the building in a slightly more prominent manner, with an emphasis on slightly. And that would be the motion, and it would be staff condition plus a new condition plus a consideration. That would be my motion, Mr. Chair.
Could I make a friendly amendment to delete the streetlight standards in the alley?
I actually, I absolutely see your point, Board Member Smith. But I think safety for me is more important than, you know, if those lights during construction may cause some sort of a damage to the existing building. I think there's going to be prominent architects and contractors and inspectors. And so I'm not really afraid of that. In regards to it taking attention away from the building, I'm not sure I agree with that thought process. But even so, I think safety, this is an elderly project. This is a sale. It's off of Broadway. So safety is of concern to me. And so if the developer and the design team is putting forth such a nice lighting package, I would hate to get in the way. So that's why I don't really see that as appropriate.
I will just mention that there are all different types of lighting in that proposed alley.
So that's my motion.
Okay, is there a second for the motion?
I second.
Okay.
Okay, so thank you. It's my understanding that that you all are keeping the staff's condition, and
Yes.
then there would be a condition on emphasizing the entrance to the project slightly, not in a grandiose manner, but just making it a little more prominent. That would be a condition, if my understanding is correct. And the consideration is consider a darker color brick, particularly at the base, to be more harmonious with the building, with the historic building next door. And then there was comments on the bricks at the corner elements that I didn't quite get.
Under the same consideration, I think we could even put that under one consideration, is the design team to consider a darker color brick that would be more harmonious with the existing historic building next door at the base of the building and perhaps the corners.
Okay, got it. So that would be a consideration. A condition would be the better emphasis of the building entrance, and the consideration that staff had initially on the in the staff report. And those would be the three comments. Is that am I getting that correct? Correctly?
That's right, Mr. Yes,
Okay.
Mr. Keyser.
All right. So a motion was made to approve the project with conditions. This will be a roll call. Mr. Simonian.
Yes.
Mr. Minas.
Yes.
Ms. Smith.
I abstain.
Okay. And Mr. Welsh.
Yes.
All right. Motion carries with 3 and 1 extension. Thank you.
I wanted to congratulate Mike and the entire housing department and also staff for working so diligently on this project. I know it was a lot of work, and it's not easy to do it in such a small period of time. So congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Congratulations.
Okay, thank you. I believe that was our last item on the agenda tonight, correct? Okay, would somebody like to make a motion to adjourn?
I move that we adjourn.
Thank you. We are adjourned.
Happy Memorial
Next
Day.
time.